Hello, my friends. I am the Dungeon Tutor. Welcome. Today, we have a topic from RPGaDay. This being the 18th day of August, we have the 18th topic. And today's is a fun one. This is an indulgent, autobiographical topic. Share a memorable moment of play. Now, my play or other people's play, because I run games most of the time, I'm going to again be self-indulgent, and I'm going to pick a moment that I played. And I remember quite fondly. It's with one of my most recent characters, Corbrecht Cinderflume, Dwarf of the Dwarves, and a wizard, which was a novelty because I played through editions where dwarves aren't wizards. They're innately magic resistant, which meant no wizardry. And that wasn't a problem. I mean, don't get me wrong. I never begrudged that they couldn't do magic. It's part of their identity. But once that restriction was gone, it's like, it makes sense that dwarves would be wizards. They'd be really freaking good wizards. As long as they can, they're not inherently prevented from doing it. They have a long lifespan. They have a dedication to a craft, willing to do things again and again and again, to the point that others would have given up just to say they've completely mastered something. A dwarven miner, for example, isn't just there purely to rest ore out of the ground. It's to make sure that they perform their task as perfectly as possible. Every stroke considered and practiced 1,000 times until every single blow is smooth and flawless and as effective as possible, sparing their gear as much as possible so their gear lasts longer, because that's the kind of dedication that a miner would have for the dwarves. Now imagine a wizard, right? A wizard of the dwarves would be insufferable, as I played Corbrecht sometimes, because what other groups would be like, oh wow, cantrips, yeah. We've practiced them as apprentices so that we can just do them instinctively. And then we moved on to more powerful magics. And a dwarf would go, oh, that's cute. Oh, yeah, you mastered your cantrips. Oh, yeah, you did that. That's good. Good on you. Oh, yes. But if you're a dwarf, you go beyond that. You'd be looking at all those other spells that are dangling in front of you. And you'd pick a spell. And you cast it, and you find the intricacies of the spell. But rather than moving on like all the others seem to do, except for maybe the elves, we'll give the elves that. They live like us, long lives. But everybody else rushes forward to that next spell. For a dwarf, we consider the spell. We cast the spell and understand every aspect of it, so that every time we cast it, it is perfectly considered. It feels natural to cast it in that moment. Something that others don't quite get. For them, it's a trick. It's a gimmick. It's a way of imposing their will upon reality. For a dwarf, it's a way of imposing reality on our wills so that it only makes sense that what we want occurs. And then we just use the magic for it. And, I've had deep philosophical conversations with other wizards about why dwarves are better. It wasn't always the most endearing person. It didn't have a bad charisma either. I was just, sometimes you play with charisma, but your character is still somewhat of a jerk. And they just feel the sting of that a little more, I guess. But realistically, our characters started from humble beginnings. I started Corbrecht at 3rd level. I'd been playing another character, but I realized since I played so seldom, I asked the Game Master if I could have another character. My very first one was a Goliath barbarian named Galhard, who was great. A lot of fun. I tremendously enjoyed him, but I really wanted to play a wizard in 5th edition D&D. So I did. Corbrecht. And we played, and I loved wizardry. I always have. I love playing wizards. And eventually, we got to the point where it was clear we had main hero syndrome. We were the main characters of the story. Everyone else deferred to us. Kings, queens, whatever. You're the ones that can fix this problem. It's fate, it's destiny, it's the God's will, whatever. Lazy writing. essentially, because, you know, we were the spearhead for everything. Nobody else could possibly do what we were doing. Lazy writing. So, we were kind of enjoying being the big kids on the block. And eventually, we got pulled away to a congress of dragons. Whole circle of dragons. Ancient dragons, too, by the way. And we were there to gain their help because it was needed, taking on bad dragons. And they're like, okay, well, you know, we have decided that we are going to help because you've been fighting dragons, and we haven't had any influence in all of this. You've been fighting and fighting, and eventually their numbers are going to overwhelm you because there's a lot of these chromatic dragons. But we, the metallic dragons of good, we will help. And I got to stand there as a dwarf in front of all these dragons and go, oh, thank you very much. No. Personally, I want to thank all of you for deigning to see us and deigning to hand down this proclamation. Well, you've been standing around like great big statues doing nothing. We've been sticking our thumb in the eye of the cult of the dragon and saving people left and right. The kind of things that, with all your great power, great knowledge that you have, oh, you had a bit of a sleepy time, did you? Where you just couldn't be bothered to come in and assist where you were needed, where your evil cousins just happened to be flourishing. You just sunning yourselves on some mountaintop. Oh, thank you so much for coming down off your mountain and actually participating in this. I shamed them. I literally gave them both barrels. And, well, I did give them 2 barrels. 2 barrels of brew that I crafted for the occasion. But I absolutely would not be cowed, even by these massive gold, silver, bronze dragons. I'm like, I am a dwarf of the dwarves. I'm not awed by you. We fought your kind before when you lusted after our treasures. You know, full weight of history and everything. You know, dragons and dwarves don't often get along all that well. And I darn sure, after we've been fighting all of this, just, all kinds of stuff. And admittedly, too, the campaign was written in such a way where dragons were just encounters, which was a sin against the whole concept of what a dragon really can be. Dragons are supposed to be awesome foes, and here they were just tasked down to basically drakes. They weren't, they were full dragons, but they were just encounters. You know, great, you fight a green dragon and this, and all the entourage around him, and it's just like, that's an encounter. There's nothing behind it saying this dragon is completely clever, it's going to act intelligently. No, it just throws itself at you till its hit points are depleted. I mean, if I ran that, I feel sorry for the players if I tried to run it exactly as they said, because I would treat the dragons with a certain amount of respect. This game did not do that. It wasn't on the Game Master either. It's the way it's written. But yeah, it was a glorious thing just being able to be there in that moment in this weird remote place outside of, I believe it was some extra dimensional location we were in. And these ancient dragons are just all like, oh, we will see fit to help you, and just telling them, you're useless. You aren't a part, there's a reason you're not a part of the world anymore. There's a reason you've been kicked back to nowhere. Because you don't matter anymore. So if you want to change that, if you want to show that you're worthy of any respect, besides how big and how you are, well then yes, then darn well help us. But don't try telling us that you're doing us a huge favor. Because, quite honestly, had you been paying any attention, you could have headed this off a long time ago yourselves. And then we'd be taking on human problems. We'd be taking on orcs and bugbears and goblins and things. No, we're facing dragons. Why? Because your evil kin are better at this than you are. Now, that being said, I did get my nose cuffed for that. I did. They eventually got tired of me sassing them. There were some drawbacks. No hit points were lost, I'm happy to say, but they were not happy with me. It was not the most diplomatic thing. But all my other players, and God bless them, because they knew that I run games all the time. I run games for them almost all the time. And they let me have my moment. Even though a couple of them were just kind of biting their knuckles, like, how much is he going to get to sass this ancient gold dragon? Turned out it was quite a ways. Quite a ways. It didn't hurt that the silver dragon really liked me. She did. And she's like, you know, we should hear him out. He has kind of earned the right to stand in front of us, and, you know, let him say what he'll say. You don't have to hold it in any great esteem, because he is just a dwarf. But yes, it was a great moment. I had a lot of fun. Now on the other side of the table, running a game. I have one encounter, and I hold this up frequently as the exemplar of how to play a dragon. Really? The group was in epic levels for 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons. 3.0. This will become important. The group had been exploiting their power, making really powerful combinations, but this is before the time of builds. They just went pretty much with pretty predictable classes and prestige classes, so that they were quite strong. They'd been given quite artifact level, relic level power items. And they were gathering them together so that they could fight the big bad evil guy, which was a demigod. They were like 25th, 26th level by this time. The kind of arrogance that you get at that level, of just being able to expect to get to an encounter and just waltz through it because you know you've got the resources. Yeah, we were going to test that. Now, they knew what the opponent was. They knew it was an ancient red dragon. At 25th level, they were fine with that. No, that's not a problem at all. We can take that. We have more than enough protection against his fire. We have all the healing we need to stop him from, seriously injuring. If anybody gets seriously injured, the cleric can just cast heal and everything is fixed. No problem. Cool. We're ready. We've got everything. They bought extra potions of fire resistance and whatever else they could, but for the most part, they were confident that they were ready for this confrontation. The dragon was guarding the relic they were looking for. Its lair was in the caldera of a volcano. Stereotypical, I know, but the environment was important. And they go in. Great. Okay, well, hey, you go in, and the dragon's not there. What? Yeah, above the actual lava, there is a stone platform, a couple of them rating out to a center large stone disc that's above the lava. And you don't see the dragon anywhere. You look around and there are, ledges and stuff, but you'd think you'd see this huge red dragon. It's invisible. Aha! So they go in. And they were right. The dragon was invisible, but not in the middle of the cave. He was waiting above, and when they came in, he dropped right on top of the cleric. He knew who they were. He knew what they could do to some extent. And he chose the cleric to neutralize. He slammed on top of him and never got off. And they never were able to move him off the cleric. So glorious combat ensues. The dragon uses a couple of tricks, and instead of using fire breath, he used cold breath, which they were not prepared for, which they did not like very much at all. But they hit back hard. Their alpha strike on point. Devastated that poor dragon. Poor dragon, right? They did over 400 points of damage to it in a round and a half. It just wreaked havoc on this dragon. The dragon did plenty of damage back. There was no holding back. I used every trick he had, did as much damage as possible. When he was getting down to low triple digits, he was like, bah, and jumped into the lava. Now, while some of them might have been able to take a bit of a lava bath, they couldn't swim in it very well. Lava is quite dense. You have to be the strength of a dragon to really get through it. So the dragon is now effectively untouchable. And they're like, oh. Well, the cleric pops up and he is immediately, okay, I'm going to heal you. And he goes and he heals the barbarian, who was, again, savaged pretty badly. And then all of a sudden, the dragon swoosh right up and lands right on top of that cleric again. To the point the player who plays that cleric still has a complex to this day. I can get him to twitch just by bringing up this encounter. And the dragon is dripping lava, which doesn't affect it, but it's just drooling lava all over the cleric. And goes right back into it. But here's the thing. The dragon is fine. The dragon is perfect. Why? Because the dragon had a ring of spell storing under the lava with heal on it. So he gave them back their own medicine. And they didn't like that taste. The fight broke out again. Tremendous battle. Party again. High level with lots of toys. Turn around and again hit that dragon hard. Yeah, some of their blows weren't landing quite as hard as they were with that Alpha Strike. But the spells were flying, and that axe was swinging, and arrows were. It was a glorious battle. The dragon got down to, again, low triple digits, to the point where it didn't dare stick around, because another round it might have been finished. So again, it taunted them, dove back into the lava. The party's like, crap. And yes, this is an ancient dragon. There was no attempt to grapple it, to stop it from getting away. The barbarian was quite strong, but that's, wasn't quite what was going to happen. So again, cleric picks himself up, heals himself, because he got pretty badly hurt from all of this. And just about ready to go and start healing his own group. He does a quick healing circle spell that gives everybody back a measure, because they don't know when that dragon is coming back, and poosh, the dragon comes back again. Scroll, heal, yeah, and goes back into the fray again. Another fight. This time the dragon is using actual fire, so the resistances have. No, I take it back. He cast a spell magic on them first. That's right. He got rid of most of those temporary protections, and then he hit them with his fire. Glorious. They were hurt. They were badly, badly hurt. But at this point, what were they going to do? They kept fighting. And this time, because the dragon could not retreat, he was magically compelled, he could not leave the area. He could not flee. The party did finally manage to finish him off. But the battle took almost the entire night. They fought that dragon 3 separate times, from full to nearly dead. It was only the 3rd time that they finally finished him off, but every single one of them was pushed to the breaking point. Nobody escaped unscathed. Everybody was in rough shape. Items were spent that they had been holding on to just to try to stay alive. Every single gimmick they had to give themselves extra hit points or that little bit of extra resilience, they went through twice over. It was an incredibly intense battle. Again, taking an entire night, 4-hour-long combat. And while some people might go, oh, 4-hour-long combat, that sounds terrible, I guarantee you nobody was bored. Everybody was up for this fight. They were looking. They were all standing around. Even when it wasn't their turn, they weren't off on their phones. They were paying attention so that they could react to the carnage that was going on, with the exception of one person, the person playing that poor cleric. Because when his turn would come up, he'd be like, can I wriggle free so I can cast anything? You can make a roll. I rolled this. He rolled that. Nope, you're still under him. Could not get out. And I know some of you may sympathize with that player, but remember this: Dungeons and Dragons has long been a game of permissions, right? A wizard gives his enemy permission to live, otherwise can end it with a spell, theoretically. A fighter gives his enemy permission to where they can move. But using himself as a wall, he stops other people from getting at his friends. It's a game about permissions. And the cleric permits his fellows to die, because with his hand outstretched, he changes the course of the battle by keeping his allies vital. Typically. Obviously, you can play other kinds of clerics, but I'm just saying, using this as an example. I am a firm believer that if the players can do something, the game master can do something. Can do the same thing. And so many times, the cleric had shown how broken healing was that it was time to show them what it tastes like on their side. So it was completely legitimate. I was not being cruel. And as far as pinning him, he made himself the most dangerous person in that group simply because you couldn't win while he was still upright. Because no matter how hard you hit that barbarian, for the hundreds of hit points he had, and he had hundreds of hit points, the cleric just makes it all go away. Poof, gone. So, yeah, you had to take him out of the equation. Would it have been better to put him in a force cage or something? No, I don't think so. Being underneath that dragon was a good indicator of how the dragon was going to fight, and fight dirty if he had to, and that was pretty dirty. Gloriously so. I think playing the full range of intelligence and wit that the dragon had. And it felt really good too. So, those are my stories. I hope you like them, but if anything inspires the blood to rush, the thought of adventure, and the thrill of glorious encounters, maybe those two will come up to you as well, and maybe you'll think about those. Because, again, living in the moment and being somebody who can feel their own power and even refuses to be overawed by things that are much bigger, much scarier than himself, or, the idea of an implacable foe that uses every bit of its cunning and viciousness to defeat you well beyond what you thought you could get pushed to. That was a fight that made the whole thing worthwhile, I think, and really let them know that if you want me to, take the kid gloves off and use the same stuff on you guys, I have no problem with it. And it was good. It was good. So, my friends, thank you for joining me. I am the Dungeon Tutor. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, feel free to come back. I'd love to see you again. And if you want to relate any of your own personal stories, I would love to hear them. Just leave in the comments below. We'd all enjoy hearing about your greatest exploits of play. But I just hope you come back. And I hope that you like me enough to like and subscribe, because that helps my ego, which wouldn't hurt to have it stroked a little bit. I appreciate it. And I hope that on that happy day that I see you again in another video, that between then and now, that you, yes, you have a chance to roll some dice, to play some games, to have some fun. Stay safe out there, my friends. Until that next time, farewell.